Hello everyone. And now I was planning on making just your average gameplay example of the Kansas, basically the way I normally do my reviews. But ultimately I decided a better way was, instead of telling you exactly what I think, I will just compare the Kansas to the North Carolina. When you consider that the split is supposed to happen at the Colorado, and the players will get the choice of will they go for the Kansas or will they go for the North Carolina, I think this is a good moment to compare the two ships and kind of let you make up your own mind. First of all, armor-wise, well, I have of course played them, so I will give you some of my personal experience, my personal opinion and experience towards the end. First of all, armor-wise, Kansas has 32mm armor everywhere. Deck armor, upper belt armor. It even has a torpedo protection that is 32mm. Note that behind the torpedo protection you do have your average broadside armor. This is only the casemate armor, the belt armor. The citadel is actually hidden down here. Note that the citadel isn't actually exposed like this. You won't just be able to pen straight through it. In fact, if you activate this, you can see that there is another plate of 273mm plating protecting this underwater citadel. So you're not gonna get blapped there for free. Overall, the citadel on this ship is quite hard to reach. I have gotten citadel in the ship. It is basically, I would say, just about waterline, maybe barely below the waterline. I would say barely below the waterline would be more accurate. You can be citadeled, but it doesn't happen that often. But as soon as someone with a bit of plunging fire shoots you, especially because of the large size, making the ship lean a fair bit when you turn, you will get citadel. So it's not immune to it. However, I would say it is fairly resistant to it. On the other hand, North Carolina has access to the same 32mm plating with some exceptions, namely that it also has a 38mm deck. And the importance of breaking past that 32mm threshold is of course that the majority of HE, 203mm HE, pens 32. So if you have higher armor, you will be able to shatter the HE. And also if you're facing the likes of Musashi and Yamato, these ships can overmatch 32mm plating, so 38 is absolutely a significant advantage when it comes to survivability. The belt armor or the citadel armor is however less at 305, whereas the Kansas had 343. So you're losing about 40mm of armor. Note that the NC Citadel is slightly higher. I would say NC is exactly waterline, whereas Kansas is just slightly below the water. The NC is easier to Citadel if you give full broadside in it, so this ship does absolutely get punished if you give full broadside. I should, since we're going through the ships themselves, I should highlight the size difference, which is pretty significant. Namely that the Kansas is, of course, significantly wider and it provides significantly more broadside, aka freeboard, to shoot at. It is a very, very chunky boy. I think that NC might be, well, slightly longer. I'm not even sure if it's actually longer. The Kansas does have a fair bit of distance on it. It might not even be longer than the Kansas, but the Kansas is absolutely a significantly larger ship than the NC with significantly more superstructure to shoot, which are both, of course, bad things to have in World of Warships. You do not want to be a large ship. The smaller, the better. It makes you harder to hit and, well, it just makes you better at avoiding incoming shells. So I would say significant disadvantage for Kansas there. Health-wise though, survivability-wise, health-wise the Kansas has 67, whereas the NC has 66. So the Kansas wins with 1000 health. The Kansas also has a significant torpedo belt that reduces incoming damage by 40%, which is much better than the North Carolina's 19%. However, saying that this means that the Kansas is tankier is quite misleading, because something else needs to be highlighted, and that is the healing. The American battleship heals were buffed quite a bit, meaning that they heal more than your average heals do. The problem is that for some reason this new American BB line did not get access to this improved heal. So I am running the same flags on both ships, so both of them are running the healing flag here. And this means that the Kansas can heal for 402 health per second, and it lasts 28 seconds. And of course, running Jack of all trades, I have fully spec captains, identical once again on both of them to make it a straight comparison. So you both get access to 5 heals, but the difference is that whereas the Kansas one heals you for 402 for 28 seconds, the North Carolina one heals you for 522 for 28 seconds. What this means is that the Kansas can potentially reach a maximum healing of, well, one of these heals heals you for 11,256. And if you get to use all 5 of these heals, you can heal for 56,280 health. However, the North Carolina heals for 14,616 per heal. And if you get to use all 5 of them, you can heal for 73,080 health. So this means that the difference between the North Carolina healing and the Kansas healing is 16,800. So it would in fact not be incorrect to say that the Kansas, because the healing is so much less, basically has 1 heal less. That's how much it loses. It loses a whole heal worth of healing compared to the North Carolina. Of course, if we do talk survivability, if you add in the armor advantage of having 38mm plating in a straight up tanking scenario where they're both taking incoming fire and they're trying to sit in, nose in and survive, the North Carolina is the obvious winner here, thanks to the armor and the superior healing. Now, one could say perhaps this was to be expected, because one of the great marketing points of the Kansas is of course the artillery. The Kansas has 4x3 406mm guns. These do 11.8k maximum AP shell damage, and they have a 40-second reload. In comparison, the North Carolina has 3x3 guns, but these have a 30-second reload. But these ones also do 13.1k alpha. Note that the Kansas guns were 11.8. They actually nerfed that alpha. So what this, well, it's pretty easy to calculate the DPM here, and you realize that because the DPM value is so much lower, or the alpha is so much lower, even though you can kind of say one turret reloads in 10 seconds, the NCs has significantly better DPM. In fact, the NC DPM is 235,800, while Kansas sits at 212,400. Now, the full broadside alpha, meaning if you shoot all your guns, all your AP alpha at a target, and you score 9 citadels or 12 citadels, for the NC, the alpha is 117,900, whereas the Kansas has 141,600, thanks to 3 extra guns. Now this might make you think, well, hey, okay, you're losing in DPM, but you have this weightier broadside. But this is where you have to take into account some parameters that wargaming aren't exactly directly showing you. First of all, the sigma value. Now, the North Carolina is known for its fairly reliable guns, or honestly quite reliable guns, and it has a pretty impressive 2.0 sigma. And for example, in comparison, the Massachusetts, which is kind of the North Carolina with super heal and secondaries and so forth, well, this thing has nerfed guns, so the sigma is 1.7. That was kind of the trade-off. The Tirpitz has a sigma of 1.8. So usually we move around this kind of gap, 1.7 to about 2. But the Kansas actually has an absolutely abysmal gun sigma of 1.5. Which, to say it, it's the lowest as far as I understood of any tier 8 BB. I think the only one that gets close is, does anyone have 1.6? I'm not even sure, but 1.5 is absolutely dreadful. Now, the other big factor that you do have to take into account is the penetration values. The penetration values are dreadful, to put it simply. The North Carolina guns are known for their punchiness, but if I'll put up a graph where you can see we have the North Carolina guns, and then right below the North Carolina guns in purple we have the Colorado guns, and below the Colorado guns we have the Kansas guns. So that is the penetration, and you can see of course how the penetration falls off the further away you're shooting. And well, the Kansas guns are as much of a downgrade as Colorado guns are from the North Carolina. So these guns are quite abysmal, because it means that the effective gun power of the Kansas is such a clear loser. It has terrible Sigma, it has very poor penetration, and the effective shell rate that you're throwing out, well, it actually gets overlapped by the North Carolina in, well, 5 volleys, 2 minutes basically. NC can shoot 5 times and this ship, Kansas, can shoot 4 times, and that's it. You've already gotten outgunned by the North Carolina. It took 2 minutes. So, pretty terrible trade there. The secondaries are irrelevant on both, because, well, 5km secondaries with nothing really special going for them. AA-wise, surprisingly, the North Carolina is actually the superior. For example, 335 mid-range, 154 long-range, and then you can see throws out 6 flak, compared to North Carolina that has pretty impressive 408, 181, and actually throws out 8 flak. So the NC is actually superior here, but the Kansas does have one ace in its sleeve, and that is the fact that it gets access to defensive AA, and of course this 50% continuous AA boost, including the flak explosion boost, means that Kansas does take the win in this category, because defensive AA gives it such a huge leap. Handling wise, however, it gets quite rough for the Kansas once again. It is the slowest tier 8 battleship by a mile. With the speed flag active that gives you 5%, it does 24.2 knots with the flag on. NC in comparison does 28.9, so what, 20% gap almost? Not quite, but you get what I mean. Kansas turns tighter. It has a 700 meter turning circle, but on the other hand, the NC actually has the better rudder shift, 15.2 versus 15.7. So honestly, they're pretty close. The only difference is that NC is significantly faster. So obviously, NC is the clear winner once again, because the speed on the Kansas makes it crippling to deal with. It makes you very poor at dodging torpedoes as well, because normally if you're sailing away from the torpedoes you get more time to evade, but this big clumsy ship with this poor speed makes you such a juicy target. And it's not just that you get caught out and focus fired, it's also that trying to relocate into positions where you might be more effective is very difficult, because the ship is just so damn slow. Finally, of course, we have the Concealment. Another tough blow to the Kansas. 13km conceal might not be the worst at tier 8, but when you consider the fact that the NC can reach a pretty damn impressive 12.3, 13 kilometers on a ship that is already kind of losing in every category is really rough. Add in the fact that the NC can get a pretty damn impressive 8.1 km air concealment, which means you're pretty well hidden from planes. The Kansas has a dreadful 10.9. The difference is just harsh in every way. Overall, there are other factors that also come into mind, that just from personal gameplay, namely, if you angle in the NC you are fairly resistant to damage, but the Kansas, it's kind of so roundly shaped that I've noted that even if I try to angle nose in, ships have had an easy time of just getting full pens on this huge round broadside or a freeboard that doesn't really angle well against the enemy. There's also the fact that if you try to play nose in the Kansas, you're effectively losing half your DPM, whereas the North Carolina is only trading a third of it, which means you can often quite comfortably sit full nose in and trade with other ships, something the Kansas cannot afford. If you just go nose in, your DPM becomes such garbage that it's not even worth it. I have such a hard time understanding the point of this, especially since the Minnesota, well, you have already seen my Minnesota review. Ultimately though, I will leave you to draw your own conclusions and your own decisions if you want to go for the Kansas, if you want to start grinding this ship. But I would say that this comparison, at the very least, should probably make my opinion on the matter quite clear. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this rather different approach to making a review, but considering this is a new line split coming out, I thought this was a pretty apt way of doing it. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time.